Hey, thanks for tuning in to our channel. This is Jared from 3C's Recreation. We have a brand new 2023 390 RS. Customer lets me build him a bike almost every year, which is really cool. And today we're going to do suspension springs. So we have both the shock spring and we have the fork springs right here. We're going to install these on this bike. We just did a 500. I'm not sure if you can see it in the frame, but that's a 2023 as well. We're also doing a bunch of cool stuff to this bike. So if you want to see the build, a general video, scroll down on our channel and you'll see the general build. Again, if you guys need any of these parts, especially suspension springs, give our dealership a call. We can drop ship anywhere in the country. You're going to get discounts and usually free shipping if you buy front and rear together. So let's jump into it and we'll change these springs out. So the first step in getting our forks off is we have to remove our front wheel. We have our axle bolt and then our pinch bolts down here. And then we also have the front caliper. These are two 10mm bolts. They are Loctited, so they're going to come out a little bit harder. And you'll put Loctite back on when you put them in. So take those out, front axle, and then that'll let us get to the pinch bolts up here on the forks. And when you're putting those back in, it's cool. Beta gives you the torque values right on the triple tree there. And then the shock, I've kind of already cheated because I'm doing an FMF exhaust video as well. So there is 3 bolts. There's 1, 2, and 3 that hold that rear silencer on. So that's been removed, and then now all we have to do is the upper and lower bolt there, and we can just rock and pull this shock right out. So we'll get this stuff off the bike and get it on the counter. All right, so we now have the forks and the shock out of the bike. The shock is super simple to do. We got the new one out of the packaging. This is how they're going to ship to you guys, just in this wrapper, cut it out. To do the shock, it's pretty straightforward. You have your locking collars. Most folks will just loosen these all the way down. You'll compress the spring, and then you can get this bottom shock seat. It's aluminum and it's cut out. So once the shock is compressed, you can slide this sleeve out, set it on the counter, slide the new spring in, put the sleeve back in, or well, I guess you'd compress it, put the sleeve back in, relieve the pressure on the spring, and then reset your locking collars to when you guys are setting your sag with the new springs in there, you can set it then. And then this literally just bolts right back in the bike. You got the upper and lower bolt, and then we're just gonna throw the exhaust back on. And like I said, I'm doing an FMF video, so the shock I won't show in this video, but that's the spring in a nutshell. Let's jump to the forks. All right, so we got the shock back on the bike at this point. Now we're ready to do the forks. We've unpackaged our fork springs. These are the new ones. And the first thing we'll do is the right fork tube. This is our compression and spring preload. So the first thing we have to do when we're doing this is count our clicks and then back these out all the way. So we will record this, back these out, and then we'll tip it up and I'll show you guys how to start the process. All right, so we've recorded our settings for the customer, and we're now going to use the Beta tool. If you guys buy springs, I can send this with them. It fits the top cap nice. It's a 10-point wrench. So now we're going to crack the top cap and let the outer tube slide down. Sometimes if you're doing this by yourself, you can crack this loose in your bike. So loosen the upper triple clamp bolt, and then you can sneak this wrench in there sometimes and crack that loose. But I have extra hands here today, which is nice. So we're gonna loosen this up, and then this outer tube will slide down. We are not doing a full fork rebuild. Now, I'll keep talking about that more here in a minute, but so we're gonna slide that down. Here's our spring. We can already get to it. It looks super easy. And this is kind of where you guys might need to modify some of your wrenches at home. So we took a 19 mil and we grinded down both sides of it. I keep this right in my fork toolbox, because inside of here it's a pretty thin nut that they give you, so you have to slide this in. And then this is a 2023, so the upper one is actually a 17 mil. If you have an older 2020, 2021, it's a 19 mil in the upper nut. So all I'm going to do is pull down on this spring, and I'm going to slide my 19 in there. And because it's slimmed down, it slides in nicely. And let me grab a paper towel. Now I can take my 17, I'm going to stick it right in the top, and I'm going to crack that top cap loose so you can see that it's spinning loose. And you don't really need the wrench for much other than just cracking it loose. And then we can spin this off. Some model years, like the older 2020 and 2021s, you guys will have like sometimes like a washer on here. So this is pretty simple in assembly. I'm just going to set it right on the counter. And at this point, all I have to do is get my wrench out of the way. So I'm going to pull back down, slide over, and I'm going to pull up on this. And I'm going to save this oil. This customer, it's a brand new bike, hasn't even been ridden. we're gonna save that oil inside this bike. I know some of you guys at home want to replace this right away, put your own brand of oil in it, but that's not what we're doing today. We're just doing a simple spring replacement. So there's really not a lot of oil being lost, maybe a couple drips. I have a really cool tool that helps me recover the dampening rod. So as you saw, as I moved that spring out of here, that dampening rod fell down back into the oil and there's no way to reach it. So this cool tool, and make sure you get the right end down in there. You screw it right on the end. Doesn't have to be super tight. Just get it on there. And then now I'll be able to pull that up. So here's the new spring going in. And now I can grab the end of this. And it's just reverse process. So I'm gonna pull down pretty hard on this. I can tell the spring is definitely stiffer. Get my glove out of there. So now we've got this trapped. I can loosen my tool. This is a lifesaver. Otherwise you're trying to work this inner cartridge up through the spring is a lot of work. And what you want to make sure, and I should back up real quick, is you want to make sure that this inner cartridge here is backed off enough. So let me pull this back up. I want to show you guys this. So we want to back this up. That way, whenever we screw this cap down, this has to bottom out before it touches the jam nut. So I just back this up quite a bit here. And so now when I screw this back together, that should bottom out before the jam nut stops it. This has to seat all the way. So I'll screw this back on. Get our new fork spring back in there again. And we'll pull up on it. I can remove this. And then now when I screw this on, we'll go all the way down with it. This will bottom out before it hits that jam nut. So right there, this just bottomed out on the threads, which is what you want. So now I can hold that still and I can bring that jam nut up to it and tighten it down. So just keep going around with this. And right there, the jam nut's now seated against there, and we just need to tighten this down. Don't kill it. There's not a torque setting for it. You just have to get it tight without, you don't want to strip the threads out and break this. So get it tight. We'll get our tool back out of there. And we're really close to being done. So now all we have to do is just slide our outer tube back up. Spin this on all the way. Just make sure your O-ring looks good. This one's obviously brand new. And we'll get our cap nut wrench. And you don't have to kill these either. They just got to be nice and tight because your upper pinch bolts will tighten that and keep it nice. So that is the right-hand fork, the compression side, and we're going to reset the customer's settings back to where they were before, and we'll get to the other side here now. So we're going to do the same thing on the left fork tube. This is our Rebound Cap. So we're going to back this out all the way and record the numbers for the customer. So we've got that backed out all the way. So now we're going to crack the cap loose. We'll slide the outer tube down, and this side's a little bit different. The upper nut in here is still a 19 mil, so we had to, we're gonna go back to two 19 millimeter wrenches. It would be nice if this one was a little bit thinner. It's still gonna work just fine. So we're gonna use our one that I'd already grinded down. We're gonna slide this down. We gotta keep this plastic cap up in there. So now that's slid down, you can see in there. So now you can see I gotta get this 19 mil on the upper cap there. If you slide it in just right. If you're at home and you don't have a second 19 millimeter that's cut down, like this one doesn't really want to slide in there that well because this cap, plastic cap is so deep, you can just use your cap wrench. This is all one piece, so we can just take this, stick it up here, and crack this loose. And we can just spin this off by hand. It's all one assembly. And be careful, you got this plastic cap to keep track of. And at this point, it's just like the other fork. We're just gonna let that go, and you're gonna see the dampener rod slide down in. We're gonna pull this fork spring out. We're gonna let it hang out here for a second and then drip some of the oil off it. We're gonna do the same thing like we did on the other side. We're gonna find it in there. And I'm gonna back this jam nut off. That way our cap will screw down all the way. And we'll put our new spring in. We'll pull it up. We'll pull down on it. Get our skinny 19 mil in there. And again, you can tell that these springs are definitely a little bit stiffer. So we got the 19 in there just fine. And we'll screw our cap back on. And we want to make sure that this bottoms out, and it just did. So cap is bottomed out. Now we can tighten this jam nut up. Again, don't make it too tight, but you don't want it to come apart either. So we'll pull our wrench back out. We're going to slide the outer tube back up into place. And I'll use this wrench again. Get it tightened down there. Again, it doesn't have to be like killed. You don't have to, and please don't use any Loctite. You're not supposed to. So we're now going to set the settings back to the customer's requirements, and then we'll get them back on the bike. All right, so we just got the forks and the shock reinstalled in the bike. Please make sure that you guys use your Loctite on your front caliper bolts like they want you to. And you want to torque everything to spec. For the triple clamps, it tells you right on the triple clamps what to torque those to. So do that, tighten them down in the right order, put your front wheel on right, and then tighten your shock bolts down, and then I slid the exhaust back on for the FMF video. So again, this was Jared at 3C's Recreation. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. Enjoy the ride.